everybody. It's Scott once again, and I'm here today with Bob McDonnell. And Bob just gave a presentation to my Vistage group on turning on the financial headlights, looking ahead from a financial basis. And it was a great presentation. It kind of, in my mind, took me from, what does a bookkeeper do, a CPA, a controller, and maybe more importantly, where's the leap to a CFO? But Bob, thank you for joining me, and thank you again for a great presentation to my group.
You're welcome, Scott. It was my pleasure. I love Vistage groups. I love the atmosphere that the groups that they have. Everybody is eager to learn and to move forward, and you've got a fabulous bunch.
Thank you. Well, Bob, let's dive in. Now, if you can, I know that there are various components that you spoke about in my group. Can you take us through these components and tell us what's important to know and what's the difference between each component?
Yeah, great question. So our presentation focuses on the financial decisions and the financial decision making that a business owner has to make when running their company. We look at three different areas. One is the perspective. Generally, in the past, people have run their business based upon their checking account, right? If they've got money in the bank, then they've been successful. And that's more of a backward-looking perspective. How did we do last week? How did we do last month? What's been our results? And that works great up until it doesn't, right? And it doesn't work because it doesn't let you look ahead. And we want you to look ahead. We want you to shine the light like you're driving a car at night, right? Can you drive a car at night without lights? You can, but you can't go very fast. You can't go very safe. It's not really the best way to do it. So we show you how to, in the financial perspective, how do you turn on those headlights so that you can see where you're going in the future. One of those areas is the next area we talk about is with the teams. So what does a financial team look like? What does a top level financial team look like? Who are the people on that team? What do they do? And what are the characteristics of those people? Generally, everybody's going to need a bookkeeper, a CPA, a controller, and a CFO. And depending upon where you are in your business, you'll need more or less of each of those four different roles. We talk about who are those roles, who's the best person to perform those duties, what are the positives and negatives as far as bringing somebody on full-time versus being able to plug somebody in on a ad hoc fractional basis. And lastly, we talk about are the tools that a business owner really needs in order to make the best decisions possible. And some of them focus on past performance, and several of them focus on projections and contribution margins and things that allow you to really dissect in and dig through to get to the roots causes of your success or the root causes of holes in the boat that you might have, as far as you might be a successful company, but you're bleeding profitability somewhere else. And we help people kind of find out where that is so that all of a sudden now they're working just as hard as they were before, but they're making more profit. They're keeping more profit because they're not letting it leak out the side of the back of the boat.
One of the things I enjoyed was watching you take us through an exercise of looking at profit and loss statements and various financial data where you could see on paper where a company was struggling, literally within minutes and helping us point that out. So that I found very useful. But one of the things, Bob, that strikes me is not every company is either mature enough or maybe at a size to bring on a CFO. How do you handle that, or how could you address that and still get that expertise and knowledge?
Right. So the beauty of business nowadays, excuse me, is even what we're doing here, right? We're over Zoom. We are able to have meetings where we're not on site together, which means you can use that to get the best services and products to your company. So when it comes to like a CFO is going to be the most senior level financial advisor for your business that you're going to have. And when you're starting out, you may not need the expertise all the time, but you need it a little bit in order to really kind of show where you're going to go and make sure you're on that same path. So maybe you only bring in at a couple hours per month, couple hours per week. Maybe you bring in a CFO to help guide your current financial team. So it's somebody that you can bring in, much like you do with your CPA right now. Your CPA generally isn't part of your own company. You outsource that. You're outsourcing that expertise of tax and compliance to somebody else. So it's akin to the same thing where you are outsourcing the expertise that you need as far as growth, as far as profitability, and raising capital, that you can go out and get the best service that you could possibly get and not have to hire somebody to just sit around, sit on the bench and wait until you tap and call them. So it's you really have kind of the best of both worlds now, where you're able to really build that team of A players, but not have to spend the budget of having to pay for 10 A player people on your bench when you're not going to use them all the time.
So I'm sure you're bumping up against a lot of organizations that are making a mistake by not having the right resources or not looking at the right data. What do you see is the most common mistakes that young and up and coming companies are making?
I mean, the most common mistake is just because most people don't really look at their results unless they're losing money. When they start losing money or they start having problems, that's when they start looking. When in fact, you may be successful, but you may be successful at only half the level that might actually should be at, because you're allowing profitability to kind of just filter out of your business. There's been many studies done which really show that for most businesses, 20 to 30% of your business, of a customer or a product base or a service, really kind of carries the company as far as the profitability. But on the flip side, 30 to 40% of your customers or your product bases are actually unprofitable. So there's a large amount of business that you're doing, which really is just, kind of churning the wheels, busy work, really not allowing you to go forward, and actually becomes a drag on earnings and becomes a drag on growth. And we help people kind of dissect through that so that they can really determine what is working, why is it working, how can we do it better, what's not working, why is it not working, can we fix it or should we get rid of it? So it's really those types of questions that a CFO is going to ask. CFO is going to ask really the why and the what can we do, rather than, okay, what happened? And the controller is more of the getting the data together. What happened? We can analyze, okay, what happened in the past? That's great, because you need to know where you are and how you got there. But the better question is, okay, now that we know that, how are we going to move forward and move forward in a much more efficient manner? Because with the things that have changed in business today, financial efficiency is one of the key elements that drives the value of a business. It's your ability to two different things. One is your ability to influence customer outcomes. And the second one is your financial efficiency. So to what extent can you influence your customer, and can you direct them to an action or an outcome? And number two, if you're very good at that, to what extent can you do more and do more with less? And essentially that's the financial efficiency that we're talking about. Gone are the days where you can assess, when you can amass massive amounts of capital and just manage return on assets. You see companies that have come into the business now that have no assets. Uber has no assets. They don't own a fleet of cars, but yet they're massively successful. So there are people that are changing every industry out there. And if you're not on the forefront looking for who's doing that, can you do it yourself? Somebody's going to come in and replace you eventually.
So when we think about financial headlights and looking into the future, what other metrics or tools are recommended to get a better vision on future performance?
Right. So future performance is more on projections and budgeting. So it's not only so budgeting is proper for upcoming projections. What are we going to need as far as people, capital, resources? And then you want to have your budget to actual to see, okay, how are we doing? Are we doing as well as we thought? Maybe not as well, maybe better than we thought. So we can make adjustments. So the adjustment pieces are more in the 12-month rolling averages, so that those averages always change. So as you change and improve, or you change and things have changed and you maybe have gotten worse, you can make those adjustments rather than having to sit back and wait for that next 12-month cycle to come around. Another thing is your 5-year projections, as far as what are we going to be doing in the next year, 2, 3, 5 years. Does that still make sense? Does that hold sense as far as what are we going to need, kind of moving forward, kind of like looking way out in front, driving down the highway, not just looking at the car in front of you, but looking over the tops and seeing, oh gosh, there's some headlights that have gone on, or brake lights 4 cars in advance. I'm going to have to stop. Where if you're just focused on the guy right in front of you, you may not have enough time, to react. And with analytics now, customer margins, contribution margin, things like that have allowed you to really dissect your business on a transactional basis to see who really provides you with the most value and what does it really cost to have a customer, to service a customer, to have a product line. And rather than having everything kind of lumped into one category as far as your expenses, being able to kind of break it out and understand how things actually are working.
So I think most of the people in the businesses that I'm working with probably are good up through a controller, right? They've got their outsourced CPA, they've got probably a good bookkeeper, probably a fairly solid controller. But what is the skill sets of a CFO that are really going to advance a company going forward?
Yeah, another great question. So the controller is the one who really looks ahead and plans more and can model more. The best controller is somebody who's really good at accumulating the data and not necessarily asking questions about it, but making sure that they have the data and making sure that the data is correct and been recorded properly historically. So making sure that the history of the company is correct. So then you need somebody moving forward that's going to look at different areas. Early on in a company's trajectory, it's going to be more about growth, as far as where you're going to get the growth and how is that going to work. You're going to have a lot of questions kind of about that. As you move forward, you're going to look at, okay, how do we now expand? We're going to go out of our normal market. Are we going to expand into, bigger plant and equipment? Are we going to look at new locations? We're going to look at new markets. The CFO is going to help you throughout that process. A CFO then, as you get more mature, perhaps you're going to buy another company or buy a supplier or something like that. So having somebody who is good with M&A activities, somebody who's good with raising capital, is going to be important. And then on the very, very back end, as far as, okay, when you are looking to leave your company, how's that going to work? As far as maybe it's through a sale or through an ESOP, or maybe you're going to take the club, take it public. That's another set of skill sets. Now, each skill set has its own challenges with itself. So it's very rare that you'll actually find one CFO who is proficient in all of those areas, which makes it beautiful to use a fractional CFO, because then you can bring in, much like if you had a baseball team, a starting pitcher is going to do one thing, a middle reliever is going to do something else, and then your closer, and even you get into a lefty-righty situation, is going to be on the back end, highly specialized, but highly leveraged. Much like the same way that a company would use a CFO or the talents of a CFO, kind of what you need to do is look at what do we need as far as knowledge and experience, and then where do we get that? And maybe it's one person. Maybe you can find somebody and they help, and then they grow with you, or maybe you just plug people in as you need them along the way, much like you would any other type of consultant who's providing a subject matter expertise.
Makes sense. Any last thoughts on financial opportunities that companies need to be aware of?
Well, the biggest thing is just having I want to say the vulnerability of really admitting maybe that you don't know what you don't know. Most company owners have started the business kind of on their own. Maybe they're really good with customers. Maybe they're really good at operations. When it comes to hiring and managing people, maybe it's okay, maybe not so much. But normally, when we look at those four areas, finance is usually the worst one that they have. Financial people generally aren't entrepreneurs, so it really doesn't normally work that way. So that's usually the area that a business owner or leader, what we find, will say that's really their biggest area that they can improve in. So there's two ways of doing it, right? You can either learn and study and get better, or you can bring in people that have the expertise that you need. And maybe a lot of times it's the combination of both that you need. And that's what we try to help step in, so that people can make better decisions, make them quicker, get better results, and ultimately reach their goals.
Bob McDonnell, those great words of wisdom. I appreciate that. I'm a little late in my life to go get those skills, and I think to go find somebody on a fractional basis is probably my best move, and probably the best move for a lot of the people that I work with as well. Bob, if somebody wants to learn more about you and this process, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can look me up on LinkedIn, although my last name is McDonnell, McDonnell. So a lot of times if you're looking for McDonald, like the hamburger guys, you won't find me in particular. The company I'm with is called Preferred CFO. That's pretty easy to remember, Preferred CFO. And it's just preferredcfo.com. And we have a lot of information on there as far as, kind of what we do, how we do it for people, and some customer testimonials as far as here's what we've done for some other people, some customer stories. You can reach out to me at bobm@preferredcfo.com, my email. You can even call me on my cell, 678-472-3793. Be happy to answer any kind of questions that anybody might have.
Great. Bob, thanks so much for spending the time with us today, and wishing you all the best. And thank you again for speaking at my Vistage Group.
It was my pleasure, Scott, and hope to catch up with your people very soon.
Very good. Bye-bye, Bob.
Thank you.